Hi guys, Kevin Ellis Jr. here with the Apex Racing Academy with this track guide from Montreal on the Porsche Cup car. So just to start us off today then guys, you'll notice that as we come down the front straight we're positioning our car already for turn 1. As you come down the front straight, obviously you come out the final chicane on the right hand side, and then as you come down the front straight you're going to transition over to the left up against the grass on the left hand side here, so that you have a straighter line where you brake for turn 1. Obviously if you're on a qualifying lap then just keep it tight to the right hand side the whole way, take the shortest line or the shortest distance to the line from the final chicane. But if you are doing race runs then it's important to get the car position back over to the left, so that as you're coming down into turn 1 here you can see how straight a line we have as we begin to get onto the brakes. If I was to keep it tight on the right hand side here, I'd be having to turn a lot more at this point in the corner to try and keep it tight to the right hand side, and thus it's pretty likely to mess up the weight transfer of the car and either lock a right front tyre, or as I approach the corner, rather than turning in from here, I'm going to be turning in from somewhere in here. So that's why it's so important coming down the front straight to position yourself on the left hand side so that you can come down into this corner and brake in a straight line. So with that obviously as well you can see the brake marker. It's the first kind of tarmac patch after the second tarmac patch on the way down towards turn 1. You got the first one on the right hand side, past that 3 board away off on the right, and then you're starting to get onto the brakes right around here. Now it'd be nice and gradual onto the threshold, or onto the brake pedal up to threshold of course. Try and keep the weight transfer forward as slow as possible. It also allow the car to maximise grip, and you can see already here we're having to counter steer just a little bit as we're coming towards the apex. Really low grip surface, and it's a high speed entry, so you're going to be kind of on the edge a little bit as you come into here, down into second gear, and you just want to get as close to the lip of this curb on this side as you can. You don't want to be cutting right over this flat section here, because as you come off this lip on the end here the car's going to pop up onto 2 wheels, and it's going to cost you a little bit of momentum and you can't quite get the car positioned, so you want to just sort of run round the top of this curb here. Give it a little burst of throttle and then back onto the brakes again, still keeping it in second, getting as close up to the grass as you can on the inside, and then just drop off the curb here and keep it nice and tight the full way through this corner. As soon as you drop off the curb as well, that's your key to pick up the throttle, and again you can see us here keeping it as tight as we can to the right hand side, tracking out just a little bit on the exit, not all the way out to the curb, just out to the middle of the track, just to try and keep the momentum up and try and prevent any kind of wheel spin. But generally you want to keep it as far to the right hand side as you can. Again, take the shortest route possible, and then cut across to the left here for the second chicane. Now into here it's a little bit hard to spot the braking markers. There's a bunch of tyre marks a little bit further up the track which you can see here. Normally I'd brake just about in line with them, or ideally you'd want to brake that late, but obviously in this car you can't. So as you come past the 2 board on the left hand side, you're going to start getting slowly onto the brake pedal, which you can see here, and then as you come across the top of those tyre marks you want to be at threshold, which again you can see here. You see the brake pedal really doesn't change, the input doesn't change, and then as we turn in we really start to lift out of the brake pedal just to try and stop the inside rear from locking. And then into this right hander you want to take a good chunk of curb off the right hand side, which you can see onto the flat bit. Like what I said not to do at turn 1, you want to do that here, and as you come through here you can see you want to aim just for this little bit right here at the end of the curb. The car will pop up quite nicely just over this little part of the curb here. You want to get the right hand side tyres over that, powering up as you come off that right hander, getting just to full throttle, lifting, flicking it across the left hander over the grass, and then as it lands off that curb back to full throttle, and then tracking the car out on the exit, obviously as close to the wall as you can. In qualifying, watch not to 0x that'll obviously invalidate your lap time. Into this right hander, cut it onto the grass on the left hand side, shouldn't get any off track for this, and as you come off the grass here I shift up into 5th and then just start to lift a little bit. Keeping it in 5th just keeps the speed up, kind of pushes the car into the corner a little bit with the lower RPMs, and just allows you to have a bit more grip as well on exit, saves you having to try and shift gears in the middle of the corner. As you come into turn 6, you're going to start braking just almost in line with these tyre marks up here. You can see just where we're starting to go onto the brakes back here. So it's more as you kind of come past this this wall on the left hand side, but it's a little bit far out of shot. So you can use this as a marker, or for me alternatively I'm more looking to get to threshold just as I come across this. So it's quite quick to threshold into this corner. You can see there as we come over the start of those tyres, the tyre marks. See we're at threshold, just slightly increasing again. Right hand side tyres just over the white line on the right hand side. Then open up this left hander, which will then in turn open up the right hander. Popping just over the curb on the inside here, and again similar to the second chicane, you want to try and aim for this little bit right at the end of the curb if you can. It's a little bit of a smoother transition. But in here we had a little bit of a tailwind, it felt like. So as we came through this corner, couldn't quite get the car stopped. So we ran just a little bit wider on apex, maybe half a tyre's width, and then just picking up the throttle as we come off that curb. You can see here we're getting to full throttle, up into third gear, and then we're going to lift back off to around 50% as we hit the curb on the inside. And then as the car drops off that curb, back up to 100%, and then right here we're just trying to manage the track out to the red and white curb here. If you get out onto this red stuff here, it seems to have a lower grip level compared to the rest of the curb, so try not to get your left hand side or your left rear onto this bit of the curb because it will snap on you. So as we come down into the next chicane, we're going to go past the 3, just getting onto the brakes as we pass it. It's just a little bit after the 3. And again, we're going to be looking at the 2 board here. We're going to get to threshold just as we get to the 2. You can see, look at the brake input right here. Again, that really doesn't change. So braking just as you pass the 3, get to threshold by the 2. Left hand side wheels over this white line just to open up the chicane as best you can, shooting in just before you clip the grass. And then right here you're going to be aiming for just on the inside of the white. Now if your right hand side tyres clip this grass too much, you will get a slowdown. That's kind of the best reference I've found for trying to avoid that slowdown, is if your right hand side tyres are fully on the grass, then you will get a slowdown. But through here you can see how close I'm having to cut it, and you can also see right before we get to that right hander we're picking up the throttle as well. Again, that's just to lift the nose of the car, get the weight transferred to the back, and it should improve curb behaviour. So you can see just a little bit of the tyres still on that white curb. You can see it just through the rear grille right there. You can see it's just touching the curb, and that's enough to get through there without a slowdown. Off the landing it's a little bit awkward. Try and keep turning right as best you can to open up the left hander. Not quite getting to full throttle, and then through here you just need to send it up over the curb on the inside, through the grass, land on the access road, clip the grass again, and then just get into full throttle as you come off the grass. Through here is probably the most difficult corner on the track I've found. It's the most difficult section to get right consistently. But once you do start to get a feel for it, you will start to see results. But to get time through here, you really do need to be aggressive with the curbs and get slowdowns. You need to go out there, get slowdowns on the right hander, get off tracks on the left hander, just to learn where the limits are, and then you can reel that back slightly and begin to kind of dial it in. So you can see again, I'll play it through for you one more time. We're ramping up off the curb on the inside, so the left hand side tyres are actually in the air for a large majority of this. You can see them land just there. They're landing into the grass there. But obviously the outside of the car is the side that's loaded up. So while we're on the grass, we are just trying to keep the wheel as straight as we possibly can. Once we get onto the access road, the car will gain some stability back, and then we just brush the grass on the exit as we're getting to full throttle. Again, a little bit of a correction on the exit as we carry a ton of speed out of there, just trying to maximise the exit as much as we can. Again, you can see we're not really turning left at any point here. We're just trying to keep it away from the wall. And you can see that's almost a perfect track out there. Down towards the hairpin, keep the car kind of central to the right hand side, similar to turn 1, just to give you a nice straight braking zone for the hairpin. That's going to be obviously a really, really important part of the hairpin. Good overtaking opportunity this as well. So as we come through, we're basically looking at where the grass turns to this access road on the left hand side. We're braking just a little bit before that. So alternatively you can use the 3 board up on the left hand side if that works for you. Nice and slow up to threshold from 5th gear all the way down into 1st. Obviously the whole way through this braking zone we're going to be trying to manage the inside rear locking. Unfortunately there's not really a whole lot you can do. It's just unfortunately the way the diff is set up in this car, and with the combination of the front suspension, it just doesn't handle properly. So it's a case of just trying to minimise how much that's going to happen. But you can see just as we begin to turn in, we drop a huge amount of brake out of this, and this is just to try and prevent the inside rear from locking. Here you can see normally it's a bit more gradual than that, but I've dropped quite a significant amount of brake pedal out of that just to try and stop the inside rear from locking. As we get to the apex of the corner, we're going to pick up the throttle, and to be brutally honest, into here I'd say I probably lost about half a tenth on this specific lap. It's a little bit quicker to drive it in just a little bit deeper than this, and then just try and get the late apex with a straight exit. because trying to turn and accelerate with this car in first gear is really, really tough. So you can see just how awkward it is to try and get on the power and how patient we're having to be in first gear. Shifting up into second now, and then feel free just to track out on the exit there. But you can see we had a fair bit of difficulty trying to get to full throttle. If you could drive it in a little bit deeper, we'll gain a little bit of time on entry, and then we can straight line the exit and we'll gain a little bit of time on exit as well. And the bit of time that you give up in the middle of the corner doesn't outweigh what you gain on entry and exit. So, down towards the final chicane. Again, this is probably the next toughest part after the chicane before the hairpin. This is a really, really tough part of the track because it almost feels like RNG when you hit a curb. The car acts differently every single time. Depends on steering angle, depends on throttle input, depends on speed, depends on how much curb you take. It's really, really, the way the car handles curbs is really, really, it's a really fine line between being on the limit and doing well and being just slightly over the limit. But alternatively, if you're not going hard enough, then you're also going to have issues with the curb. You need to send it in hard enough where you're finding time but not going over the limit. It's the operating window for lap time around here is really, really thin, or really, really fine. So as we come onto the bridge, we're just starting to get onto the brakes. But for me mentally, as I'm coming into here, I'm thinking I want to get to threshold by the 3. That's more what I'm looking at. Which you can see here, we've done the majority of the braking before we get to the 3 board. So the car is at the 3 board there. Take a look at the brake input here, and then if I bring this forward, you can see there's a very slight increase after that. So from 6th gear, we're going to go down into 3rd gear, and you need to take as much off this right hand curb as you can. The more you take off the right, the better the left will be, and the better your exit will be. However, the only issue with this is, similar to the chicane before the hairpin, the slowdown is on the right hand side, and from what it feels like for us, there's no real definitive line. It's a bit of just an imaginary line in the track somewhere that you can't see. It feels like it's the right hand side tires over this green. This here felt pretty close to a slowdown for me. This was about as close as I was willing to cut it on this specific lap. Just to give you a bit of an idea there. And again, similar to the chicane before the hairpin, if you watch the throttle input at the bottom left here, you can see that we pick up some throttle just before we get to this curb. This is just to start the acceleration process because you want to be accelerating the full way out here. There shouldn't ever be coming completely off a throttle to get onto the brake again. Once you pick up the throttle before this right hander, you're on at the full time on the way out. And also lifting the front end, improving the curb behaviour ever so slightly. You can see we have a little spike of throttle, and then we drop out of it just as the car hits the curb, just to keep things stable. Then as it lands, increasing the throttle again, then aiming for the left hand of the curb, lifting out the throttle again, and then as it lands, picking the throttle back up. The landing I got off the left was peached. It was absolutely peach. I really probably couldn't replicate this every single lap, but I'll try and do my best to explain how to get this as consistent as possible. So yeah, try and get your right hand side tyres right on the inside edge of this curb right here on the right hander. And then through the left hander, there's a bit of a line. If I cut to the cockpit camera here, you can see this sort of line that goes over the top of the curb. It sort of looks like a bit of a sharp edge. If we zoom in a little bit further, you can see it right here over the top of the curb. This is a bit of a reference to use just in terms of trying to gauge how much curb you're actually taking, because it's sometimes quite hard to spot if it was just a completely smooth curb. So as we come through here, I'm basically trying to get the left hand side tyres as far over this as possible without the right hand side tyres hitting the bottom of that curb. You can see where the right hand side tyres are, they're just keeping it on the red and white. We're getting the middle of the car over this sort of serrated edge at the top of the curb here, and that essentially is the best references that I could pick out to try and get this as consistent as possible. Again, as you can see, as we hit that curb again, we're lifting out the throttle, and then right as it's on the way down, start picking up the throttle so that when the left side tyres land, we're full throttle, tracking right out on the exit, using as much of the track as we physically can, and then getting back onto the track obviously before the grass shows up. As I said, on a qualifying lap, keep it to the right, which you can see we're doing here. We're not really tracking back to the left much, and with that, to the line, and that's a lap of Montreal on the Porsche Cup car. So probably the toughest track of the season so far for this. So any kind of questions, of course, reach out to us in the Apex Racing Academy Discord. I'll be able to give you guys a helping hand. But except from that, or apart from that, guys, that's the end of this track guide. So best of luck in your final week of the season, and we'll catch you back next season.